What up, bros? Bram back with another video here, and I know why you guys stopped by today. It is for this Bow PVE build. So we'll jump right into the build, but for all of you guys that are on the fence, considering swapping to the bow, especially after those mage nerfs, let me tell you why I love the bow. The bow has an extremely flavorful rotation in PvE. You are doing everything that a DPS player wants to do in an MMO. You are applying dots, you are having consistent damage with the rapid shot, and you have heavy crits with your full drawn heavy shots. You also have one of the highest burst AoE abilities in the game, and that's going to be with a 300 dex guaranteed crit dodge roll into a rain of arrows. That is going to be critting for upwards of 5,000, 6,000 AoE, guys. You do everything. And my favorite part about the bow is that your mechanical skill impacts the amount of damage you are doing. You can run a boss 100 times in a row, and that 100th time could have been your best or your worst DPS. You are never going to fall asleep playing the bow, guys. You need to hit your headshots. If you hit your headshots, you are going to melt the boss. The bow does an extremely high amount of damage. So without further ado, let's jump into the build. So for attributes, I like to run as much dexterity as I possibly can get. Currently, with my luck gear setup, I have 9 wasted stats on int and 14 on constitution, and that is just going to be because I haven't received a perfect ring yet, but this is close to that in its non-legendary form. So we'll take it. 9 wasted stats for this juicy ring is going to be worth, and then same can be said for the amulet, of course. Now with those wasted stats, we would be at about 480 dexterity if we did not have those wasted stats, and this is with a 40 dex food popped. And of course, if you're going to want to be doing the maximum amount of damage, you're of course going to want to have that food buff popped when you're in those expeditions, or when you're whatever you're doing when you're trying to do the most damage you can do. Now let's go ahead and jump into the build itself. We're going to be taking all the passives that increase the amount of damage that we can do. So of course we're going to grab things like aim true, long range, finishing shot, opening strike, surprise attack, bullseye, concussion, all of the passives that increase our damage of some of our attacks. And for the abilities, we are going to be running rapid shot, rain of arrows, which is surprisingly extremely powerful in PvE settings, and of course that poison shot. Now, some of the things I want to talk about, key factors for doing a lot of damage with the bow. One of those is going to be evasive tactics. You need to make sure you're keeping 100% uptime on this evasive tactics. You are dealing 20% more damage for 5 seconds after you dodge roll. Make sure you have 100% uptime on this. It lasts so long that there's no reason you should ever be doing damage without this buff rolling on you. Another thing would be to make sure you're tracking your cooldown on your 300 dex roll. You want to be optimizing the abilities or attacks you use your automatic crit with. You definitely don't want to be hitting the boss with a poison shot impact arrow when you use your automatic crit, right? That is doing a very low amount of damage in comparison to something like rain of arrows or a full drawn heavy attack. And also, the automatic crit does not apply to all 3 arrows of the rapid shot. I tested this, it only applies to the first one, so don't try to use it for rapid shot either. I would suggest to use it for either rain of arrows or a full drawn heavy arrow. Now rapid shot is going to be a very powerful ability in PvE. When we're hitting it 3 times consecutively on the same target, the cooldown is going to be reduced by 50%. As well as with closing in, when the boss is below 50%, every hit we are applying to the boss is reducing our cooldowns for 5%. Once you get a feel for these cooldown reduction passives in effect, it is extremely powerful. Your rapid shot is almost always off cooldown. You're almost always keeping your poison shot dot and your rain of arrows dots applied to the target, and the numbers are just going to be flying across your screen. The amount of damage is insane. You're going to be doing 10% more damage to a target with the debuff, which is going to be almost any target that you're hitting in PvE, especially with your build. You can keep these debuffs up yourself. You don't even have to rely on your team to keep them up for you. And we're also going to grab that battle precision, and this is going to increase the duration of our rain of arrows, barbed arrows bleed. That's the main reason we're going to use that. And if you have something like a keenly jagged on your weapon, it's going to also extend the duration of that as well. So that's going to be the build. Alright guys, how do we optimize our weapons for PvE? In New World, there are 4 different monster types, not including beasts. There are the Corrupted, the Ancients, the Angry Earth, and the Lost. And each of these monster types have weaknesses to certain elements. The Corrupted are most weak to Arcane. The Ancients are most weak to Lightning. The Angry Earth are most weak to Fire. And the Lost are most weak to Nature. And there are also perks for your weapons that increase your damage versus the certain monster types. So we're going to want a bow for every single situation that arises. An example we have our Corrupted bow. So our Corrupted bow would be gemmed with Arcane and has Corrupted Bane on it. Corrupted Bane is going to be the #1 most impactful perk versus Corrupted, right? That flat 18% damage increase is just insane. It's going to be very tough to beat that when it's compared to the other perks for the weapons. And we're also going to gem our weapon with Arcane. Why would we gem our weapon with Arcane? Okay, the way it works is it splits 50% of your damage, that would be thrust damage for the bow, and it does Arcane instead. So now 50% of our total damage is doing Arcane. And if that Arcane is doing 30% increased damage versus the Corrupted, that is a net 15% damage increase for all of our damage, right? So this gem effectively says 15% damage bonus versus Corrupted. Now if we compared that to something like the Opal, which is a 15% damage increase when your stamina is not full, it is just better because the Opal has a downside of doing nothing when your stamina is full. Now if we compared that to something like the Diamond, which is a 15% damage increase with a downside of not doing anything when you're 99% HP or below, the Elemental Gem is just better, right? Like it is a 15% damage increase period versus these monster types. So I choose it. It also has an upside of being extremely cool looking. It puts a glow on your weapons and your arrows, which is just sick. Let's go ahead and look at some of the bows that I have set up for the different situations. So that was my Corrupted bow. Let's look at the Angry Earth bow. For the Angry Earth bow, we socketed it with the Ruby. It's got that Angry Earth Bane on it, and it glows fire and puts your arrow on fire, which is sick. Now I have a weapon for the Ancients, which is going to be Lightning. I also got Chain Lightning on this weapon, which is sick as well. So now we're doing increased damage with that Chain Lightning, and our arrows are lightning, so that is insanely cool. I do not have a weapon with Lost Bane yet. This is my PvP bow, and as soon as I get a PvP bow upgrade, this will become my Lost bow because it has Chain Nature on it, and I will socket the gem with an Amber to do increased nature damage because that is the most effective versus Lost. Preferably, we would want Lost Bane instead of the Keenly Jagged. That's what we'll look for in the future for a Lost bow. Alright guys, let's talk armor and the armor perks and gems for the armor. So currently I'm going to just continue running luck on all of my gear because I am searching for those legendaries, and I just want increased odds of getting not only gear for myself but also bind on equip items to sell. So I will always run luck on my PvE gear until I am forced not to by either the content being too hard or we are progressing on like future content like expeditions or raids. And we can talk about how we would itemize for those future contents. So something like this chest piece is almost nearly perfect in its non-legendary form. We are going to run that flat dex. It's going to have that luck on it. Obviously it could be a 2.8% luck. I believe at 595 gear score it would change to a 2.8% luck, which would be the highest we could get currently, with that pearl in it for increased luck. And then we want things like this, like refreshing, evasion, refreshing are going to be good for almost any build, so you would want to run it on your items. In a legendary form, we would have dex, the pearl in the gem slot, we would have refreshing, evasion, we would also have refreshing, and then that 2.8% luck. Now there, for the bow specifically, the only perk we're really looking at bringing into PvE for a damage increase is going to be penetrating rapid shot. So we'll replace one of the pieces of gear perks with penetrating rapid shot when we can find one that has flat dex, luck, and that penetrating rapid shot on it. Now, if we're going to talk about gearing optimally for power level for future content, we're going to run much of the same. We would obviously drop all of the pearls out of our gear, and we would target the damage type that we are going against, depending on whatever it is. Say it's a raid, it's an Angry Earth raid, and there's a lot of nature damage. We would gem towards that, and we will also probably want to gem at least a couple carnelians into our armor to reduce our threat generation. Obviously, when tanks are trying to pull a lot of mobs together so we can AoE them down, and he finally gets them grouped up, and then we do a little crit dodge roll into a rain of arrows and we crit all of those mobs for 6,000, obviously we're going to probably pull aggro off of those. And the only way we're going to not pull aggro is if we are gemmed with some carnelian, reducing our threat generation. It's going to be very good for us in the future when we need to do that. And let's talk the idea of legendary here. So we will have 3 perks to our advantage. We will drop the luck for ward. There is a ward perk for every single monster type, much of the same when compared to the banes for the weapons. You have wards, so you have an Angry Earth ward, a corrupted ward, a lost ward, and an ancient's ward. This is going to reduce the amount of damage you take from these monster types, and you could slot this in on every single one of your main pieces of gear, which would give you an extremely high defense rating versus the specific monsters. So obviously, optimally, you would have 4 different armor setups for the different raids. Say there's an ancient raid, an Angry Earth raid, a lost raid, and a corrupted raid. You're going to want an entire gear set for each one. Now, when we're talking specifically for the jewelry, the most important perk to get for your jewelry for doing the most damage you can do with the bow in PvE is going to be keen awareness on your ring. This is the most important perk. It is a flat 11% critical hit chance for when you aren't hitting the headshots, or when you're not utilizing the dex roll. You want to just be able to get that increased crit chance. For the earring, you're probably going to want like a refreshing toast. And for the amulet, you'll probably want that health. And then fill in the extra slots, depending on whether you have epic or legendary versions. Fill in those extra slots with the more refreshing evasions. I want to talk about something that is actually extremely important to anyone who is serious about becoming a very skilled and impactful player in PvE scenarios, and that is going to be consumables. Being prepared with consumables is extremely important. You're going to want to bring in numerous amount of things. You're always going to want to have those hearty meals on you. You're going to want to have those infused health potions. You're going to want stat food to increase your damage or potentially increase your health with the constitution food if the situation arises. You're going to want honing stones to do more damage. You're going to want infused coatings for each of the monster types to do more damage to them. You're going to want corruption tinctures when you're experiencing the corruption affliction, and you're going to want blight tinctures when you're experiencing the blight affliction. All of these consumables combined together are just going to make you the most powerful you could possibly be. And obviously for the bow specifically, we're going to run the highest tier arrows that we have in the game at the time. Currently is the Orichalcum arrows, so when you're trying to do the most damage you want to do, you're going to want Orichalcum arrows on you at all times. And don't sleep on the amount of arrows you need to bring for expeditions, guys. If you're going to run an expedition one time, I would bring at least 1,000. If you're going to run a numerous amount of expeditions in a row without going back to town, you're probably going to want to bring several thousand arrows just to be safe. Alright guys, and lastly, I'm just going to give you the best tips I can think of. I want to reiterate what I talked about in the beginning of the video. Most important things for the bow for optimization for damage: 100% uptime on evasive tactics. Make sure you're utilizing that 300 dex roll. Use this on Rain of Arrows for AoE, Heavy Drawn Arrow for single target. Now, make sure you are canceling the animation of your Poison Shot and your Rain of Arrows. So I want to use one of they both end the animations the exact same. You will kind of just like let go of your bow and sit there, and you won't be able to start charging your next shot. But you can roll out of that animation and it'll make it faster, which is a DPS increase. So they both have the same animation. So this is what it looks like when I Rain of Arrows and I don't animation cancel. I'm gonna be trying to light attack as soon as I can. I'm spamming it now, spamming it, and now I can finally light attack. But if you go ahead and poison shot and then roll, you'll already light attacking. See, it's much faster. Okay. Another tip I could have for you guys is make sure you're smart about when you're using your rapid shot. Rapid shot is actually a pretty lengthy animation and you are rooted and stunned to the ground. So maybe you're waiting for a certain mechanic for the boss. If he has like a ranged ability and sometimes he targets you with it, make sure you're waiting for him to use that ability, or you feel safe enough that you can get off a full rapid shot without being punished, because we are a glass cannon at the end of the day. Another tip I would have for you guys is make sure you're keeping 100% uptime on your dots. Your poison shot and your rain of arrows do an extremely high amount of damage. Over the duration of poison shot, it does 240% damage when you're talented into infected arrows, and your rain of arrows, when talented into barbed arrows, does 235% damage in total. So make sure we're using those in cooldowns. Find a way to weave it in between your abilities, and make sure you're really focusing on hitting all 3 shots of the rapid shot, because it is a massive DPS loss if you miss a single one of them on the same target. Obviously, you're going to lose that cooldown reduction on it, right? And the last tip I have for you guys is to try to take your time and learn the movements of the enemies that you're against. If you know exactly how a boss moves when it does a certain animation, you know where its head is going to be at any time, right? So really focus and learn the enemies that you are against, and you will be hitting way more headshots. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. I had a great time making this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. The bow is so much fun, guys. I cannot stress it to you enough. The bow is so fun. If you're still on the fence about it, give it a try. Make that swap over to Dex. You won't be disappointed. The bow is extremely rewarding. It does a massive amount of damage. Does everything you want in a weapon. You won't be disappointed. But as always, guys, if you enjoy my content, hit that like and subscribe button down below. Follow me over at twitch.tv/BrandTVX. If you have any questions for me at all, bring those over to my stream, guys. I stream almost every single day. But that's it, guys. Peace. Have a great day.